So, I published a time traveler novella, all for free and all on my own, and here's how I did it. Hello, I'm Remilia. I'm an indie author and I write mostly fantasy, but I also like to dabble into science fiction from time to time. And here's the whole story about my time traveler romance, Akirio, the first right time novella about connected dreams and time travel and love. They're utopian romance novellas, okay? So there's this concept of the triangle of value, which basically says that you need 2 out of 3 things of time, effort, and money to create value. And I decided to focus on the 2 of them that weren't money. So I guess you could argue that it wasn't completely free since, time is money and all of that, but it was free in the sense of no money left my bank account for it. First things first, this novella is now available for free when you sign up to my newsletter. You'll also get the first chapters of my novels and behind the scenes updates and discounts, but that's not why you're here, probably. So, I actually started writing this story as a submission for one of the Honey Feed and My Anime List web novel competitions. Now, I didn't win the competition, not even close, but I did fall in love with this story and I gained new confidence in my writing, and I wanted to make this story even better than it was for the competition. Now, I don't usually write from prompts. I'm more of a concept crosses my mind and I dive into that and build upon it, and no frames whatsoever. So staying within the boundaries for this competition was a challenge, as was the fact that I needed to publish 1 chapter at a time regularly to even qualify, which is not how I usually work. But they say you should do the scary things, and stepping outside of your comfort zone is usually where you grow the most, which is the whole reason why I wrote this story in the first place and decided to participate in this competition. Akirio follows Aki and Ryo, surprise, surprise, 2 people who live in a utopian future where time travel is a job and people have a connection with each other through shared dreams. Aki travels to the future on her workdays to oversee and gather information to prevent the peace in the world, while Ryo is the lead guitar player in the band The Rising Hero. Ryo is also a former time traveler, and actually the first time traveler, but he got stuck in this current time and decided that he was done with his father's time travel shenanigans and followed his dreams to start a band instead. This means that he lives under the radar and keeps away from this whole system that makes this utopian civilization possible. So when he gets kicked out of the band and their shared house, he has to figure out the living situation in this world where homelessness isn't a thing. Aki, on the other hand, has her own struggles with the person she shares her dreams with not actually sharing that connection to her, and she has to deal with the fact that she's probably the only person in existence whose connection is one-sided. Well, that's on top of having this person's nightmares almost every night. So one thing leads to another, and Aki offers Ryo her guest room, and things go from there. It's a romance, so you already know where things are going. Now, I just fast drafted the first draft of this story in a few weeks because the competition had a deadline and I wanted to make sure I had time to edit it in its whole before I started posting chapters. I know I often preach that you need an editor for your story, and I still firmly believe that's true for us mortal human beings, especially if people will be paying you to read it. But that's also why I decided to do this myself, because I always intended for this to be free, and I believe that makes things a little bit different. Now, that's not to say I didn't put my absolute best efforts into making this thing great, and I do believe that it's as good as it possibly could be, with me being the only one working on it. Now, self-editing this novella, I had to stray from my usual process, partly because of the competition deadline and the whole web novel thing with one chapter at a time. But after that first draft, I let it rest for about a week. Now, that's way shorter than I would have preferred to let it rest for. I usually let my projects rest for at least a month, just so I have fresh eyes when I come back to it. But like I said, I kind of was on a deadline. After that week, I did my usual second step in my editing process, which is retyping everything while making bigger changes. So I exported it out into an EPUB and pulled it up on my iPad next to my computer screen. Now, I know, I have two screens, but I also know myself and my lack of discipline. So if I could copy and paste things instead of retyping it, I would take advantage of that, and there's a high risk that I would settle for the things I already wrote earlier. So having it on my iPad is more useful for me and actually make the process useful, because it's a lot easier to change big things when you have to retype it anyway, instead of just going in and recreating sentences when the sentence is already there. At least for me, I find that to be a lot easier. Now, by the time that rewrite was done, I was nearing the end of when I had to start publishing chapters to make it in time for the competition deadline. So I basically went over chapter by chapter, just making sure there weren't any glaring grammatical mistakes. So each chapter basically got 3 to 4 rounds of editing, because I also double checked them when I pasted them onto the website, and I had to go make sure the formatting worked too. And the plot holes were mostly filled by the big rewrite, so that was my whole editing process for the competition, going over every chapter once or twice after the rewrite, just when I published it. After the publishing deadline, I just waited for the whole competition to be over, which took a few months and gave me a well-deserved break from this project. And then I picked it up again, read through it, and made even more changes. And when I was okay with all the big picture things like developmental edits and such, I went into a few rounds of copy editing and proofreading and just polishing. Lastly, I did a final proofread out loud with a physical copy of the book, which we'll talk about it real soon, but that also made me change a lot of wordings and phrasings, and I think it just made everything flow better. Now, reading it out loud was really great for making me actually focus on the wording and also how I have actually spelled things, but it was also a pain because reading out loud is not my strong suit, and having to listen to my own voice when reading it felt a bit awkward. I know some people like to listen to their manuscript when looking for mistakes. I don't have the processing power for that, and I just usually get really unfocused when I'm just listening to things. So reading it out loud myself was a better option for me personally. Now, besides editing, I also believe books deserve good book covers, so I did that too. The competition also required a book cover, and I decided I will make this myself while writing the whole thing and also working full-time at my day job, because this competition happened kind of in the middle of when I started work again for the work season, which was stressful, but here we are. And for the first cover, I will admit I did take a few shortcuts. I used a lot of references and even post references that I had permission to trace over, and I also kind of settled for poses that were good enough, and this was the result of my drawing skills at the time. Now, I do think it's a good representation of where my skill level was at the time, and since I didn't expect the story to go anywhere and it was mostly for my own experience, I decided to do it myself, because the other option I had for still making it free was AI, which I don't want to do. So when I picked it up again, I had both more time and more drawing skills, so I decided to redo it. Everything apart from the clock in the background, because I did that myself the first time, and I'm okay with how that turned out, actually. Now, I looked at a lot of book covers. I'm talking Pinterest, Amazon, and Adlibris, and also anime and manga covers. Then I drew a bunch of thumbnails for how the cover could be. And I had a lot of ideas, but not really any good ones at first. But eventually I realized that I could merge my thumbnails together, and I think it was like 3 or 4 ideas that became the one idea that is how this cover turned out now. Now, I do consider writing more in this universe, because of course I do. So it was important for me that the cover design would be able to be adapted into multiple stories in this universe, and I have at least 2, maybe 3 more ideas for covers matching the theme, so we'll see if that happens. Drawing this, I did use a lot of references, but I did try my very best to figure out how things would look, by myself first. Like how gravity works and how things would look from different angles. And then I took in references when I couldn't figure things out. Like, I actually had my partner come in and help me figure out how Aki's pigtails would look from different angles, especially the one away from the viewer. Because, man, that was harder than it should be. Now, I did decide to keep this very simple with many flat colors and not too many details, except for the eyes. Because I really wanted their eyes to be different. And a big part of that is that at the beginning of this story, Ryo is in a slump in life. He has basically lost motivation to do anything at all, and his lack of sleep doesn't help that. And meanwhile, Aki is actually having proper sleep for like the first time in years, so I wanted her to look more alive. I also wanted to like balance them with their clothing colors, so her skirt is the same color as his shirt and her shirt is the same color as his guitar, so it's like crossing over, partly to keep it more simple and not make it too messy with different colors, but also like to show that they're connected and, kind of belongs together in the sense of the story. The clock is to show that time travel is a big thing, and like time in general is a big thing in the story. And also, like, I named the possible series Right Time, so a symbol of time felt very fitting, and that's also where future possible covers come in with different time symbols. I also gave both of them 2 things each that are important for them and important for the story. So Ryo is a guitar player, music is his passion when he actually has, life motivation. And he also eats a lot of candy, which is an important part in the story, actually. So I gave him a lollipop. It's very tiny, but it's there. While Aki has a lot of plushies, because she is dealing with feeling very alone in this world, so plushies help. And I also gave her a mug with drink in it, because she deals with her lack of sleep either with coffee or with lavender milk. And like I said, all of these 4 things are also very important in the story at one point. Now, apart from the cover, I also ended up drawing these cute little chapter illustration things, one for each of them. Now, these were kind of made as an on-the-whim practice, but I ended up liking them enough to put them in the final formatting, both for the ebook and the paperback. Speaking of formatting, I mentioned earlier that I always intended for this to be a free ebook thing, but I did end up formatting and creating a paperback, which was mostly for my own sake. And somehow I got really excited about the paperback, so while the ebook is still free, both for you and for me to create it. The paperback is up for sale on different platforms, still to a fairly low price, but since there's printing cost, I can't just put that up for free. This is also the only part I put money into, ordering a proof copy and a few author copies. Now, for the ebook, I used Kindle Create, which is Amazon's own software for creating ebooks. I find it's the simplest I have come across, and it's also free. The only issue is that you can't really add all of the metadata and the cover when you export an EPUB from Kindle Create. And if you've ever published with Kindle Publishing, you know that that's basically because you upload the ebook and then you upload the cover separately and all of the things. The way I get around that is by using a program called Calibre, where I basically add all of those things and export a new final EPUB. Should I move over to another ebook editing software like Atticus? Maybe. Perhaps I should, but right now this is what works, and it's free, and I don't need anything too fancy. Now, for the paperback, I did use Adobe InDesign, but only because I already have it on my computer and I use it for some other things as well. I know Affinity Publisher is a thing that is supposed to work very similarly to InDesign and is free. Maybe I should move over, but this works. But I am still pretty much doing trial and error with formatting, so I will not tell you about that whole process, because it's just trying this, it doesn't work, try this way, it doesn't work, googling how do I do this thing. But I will tell you to make sure your margins are right before you start inserting the text, because that's a pain to change when everything else is in place. Now, the last step in publishing a book is usually marketing. I mean, you should probably start marketing before the book is finished, but it doesn't fall as nicely into the whole workflow of creating a book, so it usually ends up at the end. Now, my marketing for this has been minimal, and that's because this novella is a marketing tool. Sure, I absolutely love these characters, and I think it's a great novella, if I may say so myself, but I did create it and publish it to be a marketing tool. Both for my newsletter, but also to add to my backlog as an author. While it doesn't take place in the same universe, I do believe this novella is a great gateway into my other works, and since it's shorter, and free, it doesn't come with the same risk as a full novel does. Now, don't get me wrong, Keep Me Breathing is great, but it's a full novel, which can be a big investment, especially for someone who comes across me for the first time. And that's where Akeryo comes in, and my newsletter, because it's a lot easier to pay with one spot in your inbox each month than actual money. So now is actually when the marketing for this novella begins. So if you want to read it, there's a link down in the description to sign up to my newsletter. You will get this novella and discount at my PayHip store, as well as the first few chapters of Keep Me Breathing, all for free, or the cheap price of letting me send you an email each month. You will also get behind the scenes, early news, and book recommendations about other indie books. And since the email only goes out once a month, I promise not to spam your inbox. Now, I didn't have to make this video, but I want to show you what is possible to do on your own, because I believe in you. If I can do this, you can do it too. And also I wanted to talk about it because, I am excited for this novella. I really am. And I hope you will like it if you decide to read it, if you feel like this is your jam. If not, that's fine. Completely fine, I promise. I won't hold it against you, but yes. I really hope you would like to read it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great adventure, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!